Hey guys, this is the man on the street. This is part of Young Street in Bloor. Very high density, populated vicinity. But, you know, this is my street that I grew up on. These are the streets I've walked many, many times. And I want to just give you a survey here. Every building here has some significance. Like, for example, see right there behind me? It says bar. That used to be the House of Lords. That's when celebs would come and certain group members echoed these chambers of pedicure for these glam rock stars. And we'd read up on them. And they would be on the cover, like on a magazine, local magazine. And of course, people would go there and say, hey, this is where they cut what's this such hair? And maybe that sells the idea, but then I walked in there once and the guy wanted over $140, I think. And I go, that kind of business attracts a lot of customers. That kind of obscene type of money. Which is, if they can afford it, why not? So it's been replaced, and that was open maybe 35, 40 years. Right behind me here. See right here? This is a Scientology building. Don't mind that. This is just fire services going from emergency. See, when you get there, how congested it could be, right? So most people would have to be aware, and again, other high density vicinities. So this building right behind me is a Scientology building. It hasn't changed for over 40 years. Now, what's the significance? Well, there were people right here. You know, they use that, what's that pulse? What's that called? It's a type of magnetic pulse that, like, animals have when they differentiate the poles, when you're north and south and you'd hold an instrument. And it was like a truth consequence. And it would indicate if you're lying or not. That type of mumbo jumbo. But it was a deceptive manner to say that it would just impulse to ask the right question. Maybe you would only discern. Maybe we would ask other people. But when we talk about also how can they use that in therapy, well, they can't. They can use that pulse emitting instrument. And I tested on when I had my Achilles, figuring out what it means today. But as you see, this building hasn't changed. It's still vacant, and there's a reason for that. Now, I'm not going to start talking semantics about different religions endowing on that tax shelter system, because then you could point at anyone. So we always try to make sure that can be abused and take away the privileges of those people who must pay the taxes. Now, right here behind me is another street, and it's synonymous, and it's a popular, trendy place. Right here, it's a one-way street, right? And that's a location down here, and some booze cans. Right, back in the day, you would go there, but I never had so much business to go in to know what actually goes in, and you either a paying customer or get the hell out, right? So you're not going to just sit there and say, hey, what are you doing here? You're going to buy something. You know what I mean? So this is other stores. All these stores have history and appreciation for it. Unfortunately, due to overcapacitated reasoning, we can still articulate like on the Danforth. Danforth Avenue is between Pape, Broadview, all the way to Kingston Road, right? And sometimes you would ask what type of businesses they would have there, and it's no different. You're talking about a landowner who would have proprietized those ideas. Nowadays, you can see it can be fractured and disenfractured even furthermore by using that same on both sides of the avenue. So when you're talking issues pertaining to, like, you know, the grievances of saying like a Turkish and Greek hostilities of wartime, and you're going back to your childhood and you're saying to what I'm saying now, I am Canadian, and I always stated that. But it's unfortunate to know that, you know, even though bigotry exists and people may sustain themselves to use it, of course, if you're caught on the deep end of the Richter scale where you're facing criminal charges. But we have to make sure everyone's on an even keel, so this way people can always understand how legislation and how Toronto became the city it is, which is amalgamated. It's also how we say certain communities try to signify their own status of their own culture, if it's Hispanic, Korean. But here it's amalgamated. It's proportionalized. But somehow some of these derelicts and some avenues, when we're talking about like public housing, people on the low income scale, and how that can be used to disenfranchise communities. So when we're talking about like cities like Chicago, Detroit, New York, we talk about how they're trying to amalgamate. And I think New York, and especially with their criteria of gun laws, it's in other cities they don't have it, but it's more rampant to sell on the market. But when we're talking about those exact same cities, when we're talking about, for example, what happens with their dowry of their money when they need to ask the Democrats what is happening in those top partitions. So we always try to make sure that, when I did visit Detroit, and I would visit my old man at the time for his 65th birthday, and we would have travel from Windsor to Detroit. And he would state, I go, this is where the Hispanics are. And I go, well, don't we have all those ideas too? But I go, that's segregation, right? And that's how I knew, like if one parent was Greek and another parent was Turkish, or if one person was Catholic and another one was Jewish, and I think those sentiments, I've grown to know what's the difference, right? So I tend to look afar, but people who grew up in those conditionings, and we know after the LA riots, when shit hits the fan, some people resort to other means that still haunts the people today. This is the man on the street.